start reading through to try to start picking out more of the things that we need to know about this practice before we can score. So, okay, so what is it? In this teaching practice, the teacher creates opportunities for students to become aware that disciplinary ideas are interconnected and applicable to the real world. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and pull out that. So we want to see, okay, what's happening with the disciplinary ideas? I like this metaphor a lot to think about the architecture of ideas, or the conceptual architecture in a lesson or across multiple lessons. So this image here, we're looking at a bunch of separate stacks of logs. And to me, this is a really good representation of the style of teaching where maybe each independent lesson is represented by a stack, and there's sort of an assortment of disciplinary ideas that are in there, but the teacher isn't making any particular effort to present those ideas in a way that is authentic to their architecture that they have within the discipline itself, right? Because disciplinary ideas within the disciplinary community do have an architecture. There are different areas of study. There are hierarchies of ideas where some are more central and others are less central. So in this situation, we're seeing a teacher just being like, oh, today we're looking at X. And then just focusing on that one idea or a couple ideas without thinking about the relationship between ideas within the discipline. Compared to this image where it's still logs, it's a similar type thing, but instead of just kind of in a bunch of discrete sort of piles that don't have much organization to them, they're organized into their natural architecture that they exist within. So I love thinking about disciplinary knowledge as like the architecture of a house, where there are some ideas. The ideas have different purposes and shapes kind of within the overall structure. There's the load-bearing beams or posts or whatever. I'm not a builder. That are giving structure to these smaller ideas that are less central. And they really make sense as a whole. Like there's a unifying theme. You see how they all fit together. And most importantly, a student can see how they all fit together, right? Like if you're thinking about these two pictures as the conceptual content of an entire course, like this is a lot more user-friendly and navigable and understandable for a student who's being introduced to disciplinary content, to a discipline, than this is. Even though we might think like, oh, it'll be easy, we'll just tackle one piece, one bit at a time, day by day. But you can see there's no apparent structure to it. So anyway, don't want to hammer that metaphor to death, but we're looking to see disciplinary ideas interconnected. And then we'll think about this applicableness a little bit later. So continuing with the idea of disciplinary ideas, by central disciplinary ideas, we mean to go beyond isolated facts, procedures, skills, etc., and move towards ideas that are at the core of the discipline and learned over time, not in a single lesson. So that's, again, just hitting on this idea that we want students to really be experiencing an authentic architecture of disciplinary ideas. And we want to see like this house being built over time with students in the classroom, so that these core disciplinary ideas might give shape to multiple lessons over time. So we want to see things simmering over time, developing over time, not these one-off, one-shot classes. And then here, okay, yes, we can figure out what those central ideas are by looking back at the curriculum if we're not sure. Again, looking at the length of time, we want to see these relationships and connections between ideas sustained over time. And then teachers can also contextualize central disciplinary ideas through natural phenomena, real-world problems, applications, and themes, so that disciplinary ideas are authentic and applicable and more likely to appear interconnected. Okay, so here we're talking about when we want to use a natural phenomena also as framing for a given lesson, ideally multiple lessons, to continue building on that notion of coherence, making these ideas coherent. And then also using those natural phenomena to show students that the disciplinary knowledge that you're exposing them to is something that actually is relevant to them. So I would like us to think a little bit about, like, to extend the metaphor of this house. We were talking about this house as the disciplinary architecture of ideas. Well, disciplines are rooted in academia, in the ivory tower, right? And even though the observations and the ideas within a discipline are based on real world experiences and natural phenomena, they've been abstracted away from the concrete reality of people, of your students. So you need to kind of like recontextualize them. We want to see the teachers recontextualizing those ideas, putting them back in their natural real world context to show students that, okay, yes, there is this set of disciplinary ideas, and guess what? They're useful tools for you. You should learn these ideas because they will help you make sense of your world and be agentic in your world. So we have an example here. For instance, a series of math lessons might start by introducing the Flint, Michigan water crisis and call upon students to begin identifying the issue and the math that they might need to use to provide a solution to that specific problem. Through the lesson, students learned math framed around the central idea of proportional reasoning, not just for the sake of learning math, but how to apply mathematical ideas to real-world problems. Okay, so just thinking about this part of the example, this is, here's the natural phenomenon, the water crisis, and showing students that, yes, these math skills that we just happen to know and be able to share with you are the things that you would need to be able to come up with a solution to this very real problem. And it's in the context of people's actual lives, right? And whether or not they experience or fear issues with their water personally, they can at minimum relate to, it's clearly a crisis that they could potentially help solve with other people in mind. And then the teachers should also help students become aware of the lesson focus and its connection to more central disciplinary ideas. So, okay, here's where we're taking the lesson focus of this hypothetical lesson of proportional reasoning, and the teacher should take a step of making the relationship between proportional reasoning and more central disciplinary ideas clear. And then beyond just listing or stating the focus, the teacher can engage students in activities where they must review or build on prior knowledge and reflect on their learning progress. Okay, so that's an example of how the teacher might make those disciplinary relationships clear. So then it's really becoming not just can proportional reasoning be a useful tool to help you help solve problems like the Flint water crisis, but these broader set of mathematical ideas is a whole toolkit that could be useful in situations, in your life. Okay, so moving beyond the example. In this practice, the teacher also facilitates strategic connections to emergent and experienced bilinguals' lived experiences. By lived experiences, we mean personal interests, culture, home, family, and community that are known by the teacher. So the teacher is not guessing at students' lived experiences or making assumptions about students' lived experiences. They have already done the work of talking to, listening to, learning from their students about their lives, what's interesting, and what's going on in their worlds. So here's where I just grabbed some pictures from a New York Times article called 36 Teenagers Show Us Their Generation, because I felt like this is kind of a perfect example of, high school students representing their worlds, their lived experiences. And these were all taken by students. It was a really great article, but that's beside the point. This is getting at, we want teachers to really be integrating the richness of their students' lives, right? We love high school students and middle school students. They have incredibly rich worlds on their own. And we want to see the teacher recognizing that and appreciating that, celebrating that even. Far too often, students are asked to leave their real lives at the door in order to come and engage with disciplinary ideas in a really abstract way. And in this practice, we really want to see students being seen and treated as fully human. And in particular, we really want to be sure that we're seeing teachers take these steps with emergent and experienced bilinguals in order to really make sure that those students who may be at risk of being alienated in the class are remaining integrated in the class. And also because those students have a unique opportunity to be expanding literacies in multiple languages, and we want to see the teacher taking advantage of those opportunities as well. So finally, ideally, learning activities are planned around these clearly lived experiences so that the student context frames central disciplinary ideas spanning multiple lessons or even an entire unit. For instance, the students might identify a community issue, or the teacher, because of students' personal interests, chooses slam poetry as the basis for learning and applying disciplinary ideas. So again, just getting back at that idea of like disciplinary ideas, our students' ideas just sort of being treated like singular logs that the teacher maybe throws in a pile, or our students' ideas really being integrated into the core architecture of a lesson or multiple lessons, so that they really become instructional threads and that students are really infused into the curriculum rather than just being sort of a side, like a side dish to it. Okay, that is it for this video. And next we're going to go into looking at parsing out the different levels and looking more at the different levels for this practice.